All right, Ken Bednaz, VP of Application Engineering at Telit. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chris.
So the big topic, and we saw this a year ago, 2 years ago with 2G sunsets. There was millions of devices that were not be able to get a cellular connection anymore because the network's shutting down for 2G. Now we're seeing the same thing happening with 3G around the world. Give the listeners a little bit more information about this 3G sunset.
Yeah, absolutely. As we talk about, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, we're talking about the different generations of cellular technology. And so 2G is a second generation technology, 3G is a third generation technology. And what we have to understand is each generation of technology is typically good for 15 to 20 years. And what's happening is, the 2G networks have been shut down and they're in the process of shutting down the 3G networks. And so the 3G networks will only be around for a few more years. And so now it's really time to take a look at what technology you're using out there for cellular communications to understand if you're going to be impacted.
Okay, and how does this differ, let's say geographically, for example? Are there different rates at which Europe versus America is shutting down these networks?
Yes, one thing in North America is we're very spectrum limited, and so North America is really focused on this 3G sunset. So as we talk about the major network operators in the US and Canada, these are the ones that are looking to sunset the 3G network. And we talk about sunsetting, we're talking about turning off that network. And so that's going to be happening over the next couple of years.
So what different options do they have available as they're looking to move up to 4G LTE? It's not just as simple as 4G LTE anymore. You have different options, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these IoT devices and mobile broadband devices that use 2G and 3G technologies in the past were using specifically cell phone technologies. I think what's really cool about 4G LTE is there's now different flavors of technologies that are designed for IoT. And so as we jump into 4G LTE, we kind of have three different paths. You have pure replacement for 3G with LTE category 1. You have a new low power wide area technology with LTE Cat M1. And so what M1 does is helps reduce size, cost, power of your device. So it helps you get extended battery life, reduce the size, kind of add some value around your application in those aspects. And we have a third, which is LTE higher category, which starts at LTE category 4 and above, which provides much higher data speeds and much higher bandwidth compared to the traditional 3G technologies.
Okay, and so enterprises will make a consideration based on what type of device or what type of deployment they're looking for. And they should also consider, if I understand correctly, geographically where they're going to be deploying when it comes to choosing between these different LTE flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the 3G sunset should not be viewed as something bad. It's actually very good because it gives us some ability to enhance user experience around IoT. And so it allows us to add new features, have better user experience. And so the move to 4G LTE is actually a good thing for the industry because now we can expand on things that we've been asking for that 2G and 3G could now provide us.
Yeah, that's exciting. Now, one of the interesting things you were talking about it most recently with RCR Wireless is a surprise, something people might not expect, where they have a 4G device, but they might lose some capabilities once the 3G sunset happens. Tell us more.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I took a look at the numbers from 5G Americas, and they were saying there's 80 million 3G devices still active on the network in North America alone at the end of 2018. And so, these 80 million, 3G devices need to be replaced. So you need to figure out what technology you're using. But there's a caveat that we talked about, and that's there's some LTE devices that will also be affected by the 3G sunset. And specifically, we're talking about LTE devices that use voice. A lot of the initial LTE deployments that use voice communications were using LTE for data and 3G for voice. And so these LTE modules would be affected because voice communications could stop working if these modules don't support VoLTE or voice over LTE. LTE was rolled out around 2010. We've seen a big push with LTE modules in the IoT market space around 2014, 2015, 2016. And all those devices that use voice in that time frame use 3G communications. And so voice over LTE did not really become mainstream until 2017 and 2018.
Sure. And then the interesting thing about that, maybe not even, let's say you're listening and you're not deploying any enterprise LTE back from a couple years ago, but just as a consumer, there's some interesting different applications of 4G LTE technology that are going to be affected and people will want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some people don't realize what devices are actually using cellular for the main form of communications, especially voice. And so you take a look at vehicles and people understand, okay, we're inside a vehicle, we're mobile, that those are using cellular modules inside and it's for cellular communications. But if you take a look at other devices, which could be call boxes on alongside of a road with a solar panel or even elevator communication, a lot of those are using cellular as their main form of voice communication. And so those are the type of devices that could be affected because people that are using these technologies don't even realize what's behind them. And so, what we're recommending is everybody take a look behind the scenes of what's driving your data usage and your technology usage so you understand if you will be affected by the 3G sunset.
Ken, that's some interesting information. That's a big impact on the enterprise side we were originally talking about. It's a big impact on consumer safety side. So Ken, I want to thank you, and I'd like to invite all the listeners and watchers to make sure you go to telit.com. We'll have more information on the 3G sunset. Thank you, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Chris.